Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is April 8th, 2024, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? First of all, I hope you enjoyed the eclipse. It got very dark all out of a sudden, so hope it was fun for you. I actually didn't have my glasses, so I couldn't see, but yeah, it wasn't the apocalypse. We're still alive. Now, let's get to the news, and I have some very good news for you guys, and today the Ukrainian intelligence confirmed that a Russian missile ship called the Serpukhov was damaged yesterday, and this was due to an internal fire. And this was revealed by the Ukrainian intelligence through a video showcasing that the interior of the ship actually caught fire, and what appeared to be some sort of cell phone that was like sort of detonated, and the fire began. So it's really interesting. The damage is unknown, but this is a relatively new ship. As you can see, the Russians built it a little bit less than 9 years ago, and it was transferred from the Black Sea Fleet to the Baltic Sea Fleet. So this ship was in Kaliningrad, and this is the first time, I think, as far as I'm concerned, that the Ukrainians were able, because this was a video posted by the Ukrainian HUR, that the Ukrainians were able to successfully damage a Russian ship in the Baltics, or the Russian Baltic Sea Fleet, for the first time. And so this certainly confirms that there are Ukrainian operatives or Ukrainian agents operating Kaliningrad. So overall, this is good news. We don't yet know the extent of the damage, but it appears that the Russians are also confirming that there was a fire in the ship. So very good operation. And again, these missile ships are crucial for the Russians. They can launch their cruise missiles through these ships, and whether they've been using this ship, I'm not sure, against Ukraine, but certainly one less of those missile ships is one less threat, not only to Ukraine but to NATO countries in Europe, or overall European security. So this is a great operation. Let's hope that they keep it going. Kaliningrad is very important base, military base for the Russians, and God knows what they have in plan for the future. As we've seen, the Russians seem to be more and more bold, and they're certainly looking forward to perhaps attacking the Baltic states or other NATO members in the future if insanity prevails, which it already has, but total insanity, and they decide to attack Europe. So that is one good news. The other good news is that it seems like nature is taking care of Russia, and the Russians are reaping what they're sowing. What I'm talking about is this massive catastrophe going on right now in the Orenburg region in Orsk. So I've reported that in the community, on YouTube community, a few days ago, that a dam broke out and essentially flooded parts of the city of Orsk, which is a city of about 230,000 people. Now, it didn't flood the entire city, but most of it is underwater right now, as you can see in these pictures. It's a total catastrophe. A state of emergency was essentially turned on, and there's over 550,000 people that are living in this region, and most of them have been told to leave their residences. So this is a huge environmental catastrophe that is man-made, right? And what is very impressive, or surprising, I should say, is that this dam that broke was built in 2010. So clearly somebody pocketed the funds that were meant to build an actual proper dam. Now, it's just theories, but I wouldn't be surprised if some materials that were supposed to be used weren't used, or something else was poorly done. This is the Russian way of building things. And again, it's not like this was unknown. The water was rising, and something could have been done beforehand, and the authorities did absolutely nothing. Why? Because most of the resources right now are going towards destroying Ukraine rather than improving the lives of the Russians. And there were some people protesting today in downtown Orsk, asking for their Tsar to step in. I really don't think that he really cares about the citizens of Orsk or the people in that region, in the Urals. For him, as long as it's not Moscow, St. Petersburg, or some other very large Russian city, a few 100,000 Russians can live through hell if they have to. All for the greatness of Russia. And again, I have very little sympathy for them because of what they did with Novakhovka last year in June. When they broke the dam, they created one of the biggest ecocides in recent history. So again, Russia, you reap what you sow. And with that also comes the other news today, that a big bridge collapsed in Smolensk. And there was actually a video showcasing the moment where it broke. and apparently there's 5 injured, 1 dead. I actually saw in that video there was a man on the railway tracks almost right under the bridge, but he wasn't hit, so I think that he just won the lottery. He should get himself a lottery ticket. But again, it's another indication of crumbling infrastructure in Russia. Who is surprised here? And what is good here is that it's a 2-for-1, because not only this bridge collapse, which is a key link in Smolensk, but it also collapsed on the railway tracks and the railway wagons. So it's a 2-for-1, and that makes me think of Ukraine that needs to actually start also destroying key railway hubs and tracks in the Russian Federation. We know that Russia's main method for its logistics is transport by rail. That's why they build a new line in the south of Zaporizhzhia and Donetsk, in Mariupol, Berdyansk, to connect Rostov all the way to Crimea, because they know that they absolutely will need another railway link once the Ukrainians destroy the Kerch Bridge. So, this is a small story. Thank God it took, the Russians took care of it themselves, but the Ukrainians also need to help out the Russians a little bit with this problem that the Ukrainians actually have, because the Russians are constantly transporting tanks, men, or goods, supplies. We can of course understand the difference between a small truck that can carry perhaps a few dozen shells and a massive railway car full of wagons, 100 wagons transporting tons of shells, right? This is the difference. So for the Ukrainians, this is a very legitimate target as well. So that is another great news that occurred in Smolensk, Russia today. And last but not least, this is less good news, and this is Trump's, according to the Washington Post, Trump's strategy if he is to come to power this year, what he will do in Ukraine. Essentially, some insiders are saying that Trump, with his advisors and other experts, are essentially telling him that the way that he will end the war is by pressuring Ukraine to give up some territory, and this would obviously reward Vladimir Putin, who is especially expecting this to happen. So he will be betting a lot on Trump getting reelected or elected this year. And you can bet that the troll farms, the misinformation campaigns will be sky high in the United States. So that's to my American viewers. Expect that to happen, just as they did back in 2016 and 2020. So his proposal is very simple. He'll get Zelensky and Putin on the table, and then he'll force Zelensky to essentially concede and give up Crimea and parts of Donbass, essentially, or Donbass completely to Russia, thinking that, somehow this is, a genius plan. And again, this is Trump, just seeing things very basically, without being very, very how can I say, offensive to Trump and his administration or his future administration. He thinks that his charisma alone is going to somehow end this war quickly. Oh, trust me, I'll get re-elected and I'll finish this war in 24 hours. That's not how it happens, first of all. And Trump is not charismatic enough to be able to convince Zelensky and Putin to have a ceasefire, especially Zelensky. You just have to look at when he went to North Korea. What did he achieve there? Right, he just shook hands with Kim Jong-un, crossed the North Korean-South Korean border, and that's it, right? Nothing else happened afterwards. It's not like the relationship instantly normalized between the United States and North Korea. Not that we expect that to happen, but there weren't any concrete actions being taken. So it's a farce, and if that's what the Trump administration, if they get elected, is trying to push, 100% the Ukrainians will not accept it. How many times are you going to fool the Ukrainians? How many Minsk agreements does it take for the Ukrainians to actually start realizing that this is all lies, and Russia will continue invading, attacking until they get the entirety of Ukraine? So it's foolish to expect that somehow Trump is going to change anything. And again, the longer the United States withholds aid to Ukraine, the less relevant any proposal, whether it be from Trump or Biden or other future candidates or presidents of the United States, will be, right? You haven't been providing any help right now in the last few months, with all due respect to my American viewers, because we know that the American assistance in the early phase of the war was crucial. And, there's still perhaps a little bit being given to Ukraine here and there, but nearly not enough. And everybody knows it, even within the Biden administration. So as much as I need to highlight the fact that MAGA Republicans are sabotaging right now this current military aid bill that is crucial for the Ukrainians, and that we need to highlight it, indeed, The Biden administration, of course, is also super frustrating to me, and has done very little since November to continue finding different alternatives to help the Ukrainians. The Biden administration knows very well the Ukrainians need. And even before all this scandal occurred, it was the same thing. Remember when Biden said, HIMARS is out of the question. Then the Abrams tanks were out of the question. Then the F-16s, no way. And it just takes so much time for the Biden administration to figure things out, right? Because they're always afraid of this escalation. And even last week, Secretary of State Blinken mentioned that Ukraine should refrain from attacking Russian soil, especially refineries and Russian power station. So it's incredibly frustrating from both sides. This is why I've been saying that it's a bipartisan issue, not only in regards to the bill, but overall the attitude towards helping Ukraine. It's this fear of escalation. And, I just don't understand it, and the United States loses its appeal as a, reliable partner. And that's why we're seeing that Europe now realizes that, it's likely can happen that Trump can get elected, which is a much bigger threat than if the Biden administration gets reelected. And I can only hope that, if Biden is reelected, that with this attitude that, that's my last term, I have nothing to lose, and thus I need to provide all the assistance necessary to Ukraine to win this decisively. Not just some ceasefire that would, essentially freeze the conflict, but a decisive win for Ukraine. We need to realize that we have created this mess called Russia. We believed in Russia. We thought that somehow they would become democratic. They cannot. They need foreign intervention in terms of helping the Russians become a democratic country that is no longer a threat to our global security. Because right now, that's what they are. They're a threat to our global security. Every other week, we have threats from either Putin or Peskov or some other high-placed Russian leader talking about how they're going to nuke England, France, Germany, United States. And they're just becoming more and more bold, especially when the Biden administration is doing very little and being very weak with its stance against Russia. And now you're hearing about China that has stepped in providing the Russians with satellite imagery to hit Ukrainian facilities. So they're essentially helping out the Russians, which is obviously another big elephant in the room. Everybody's pretending that Russia is somehow a neutral actor here, but they have everything going their way, and everything is, essentially it's in their interest to help Russia and weaken NATO. As much as they're perhaps not giving direct military assistance, we've seen these Chinese buggies in Ukraine. We've seen ballistic helmets and body armor being provided, Chinese body armor being provided to the Russians. How do you think North Koreans are able to produce their shells and ammunition? Via China. China is providing assistance to North Korea, to Russia, and then we have Iran. There's a massive axis right now that is forming, that is feeling emboldened by the fact that some of the biggest powers, specifically the United States, is doing so little to counter these threats. So I can only hope that whether it be Biden or Trump, that their administrations are going to have a strong stance in regards to all these threats, and they need to be more decisive. But I'm not liking what I'm seeing when I'm reading stuff like this, where Trump essentially thinks that he can quickly end the war by just yet again doing pretty much a Minsk III agreement, forcing Ukraine on a ceasefire. Essentially, again, by default, Russia's in control of half of Donbass, and guess what they're going to do in 2-3 years down the line? The same story is going to happen, and then we're all going to be shocked, like, how could this have happened, right? So this is kind of the frustrating news for today, but overall, very positive day. Lots of bad things going on in Russia. The Ukrainians are continuing their attacks, their drone attacks on Russian facilities, and this is an instrument of pressure, really, on the U.S. administration, the Biden administration. So you don't want us to be hitting the oil refineries in Russia. You don't want us to be driving oil prices sky high or something else. Give us the weapons. Because we don't have any choice. This is existential for the Ukrainians. They're fighting for their lives. Don't expect the Russians to be kind once, God forbid this happens and they take, more territory. They've only shown their barbaric methods against the Ukrainians. They will continue to do so. And they'll become more and more genocidal as this war drags on longer and longer. So that's the video for today, guys. Please, if you enjoy my content, subscribe to my channel. Leave me a comment about any of the topics I covered today. and I will see you guys in the next video. Slava Ukraini!